Hello my friends, in today's video I'm gonna talk about some new Dior products. Dior recently released a new limited edition collection, a very small collection, and I think it's called the Lucky Collection, but I'm not sure. I think I saw that name somewhere on the internet or on the Dior website, but I can't find it anymore, so I can't verify that. I think it's called the Lucky Collection, so just let's call it the Lucky Collection. But if you know the official name and if it's not the Lucky Collection, then please let me know. It's also possible that this mini collection doesn't have a name at all. These are the products I'm gonna talk about. First, this beautiful quint. This is called Lucky Rosegold number 644. There's also this lip maximizer, and this shade is called, let me see, this is number 064 Lucky Mahogany. And then we have a beautiful blush, and this shade is called Charmed Mauvewood number 458, and this is the blush. So these are the products I'm gonna talk about in today's video. Let's get started. And I'm gonna start off with that gorgeous blush. Again, this shade is called Charmed Mauvewood, and this is a mauvey pink shade, or a pinky mauve. And this color is absolutely stunning and very special. First, this blush contains, let me see, 5.5 grams of product. It's made in France, and this has a 12-month shelf life. It also comes with a little applicator. I don't use these, but I can imagine that these are very convenient for traveling, for example. Now this shade is described as a matte blush. It has a matte finish, but I do not fully agree on that. It's not matte. It's not completely matte. When I apply this on my cheeks, I can definitely see a bit of a glow, like a satin glow. Now, why do I think this shade is special? Well, I find this a little bit hard to explain. I'm gonna try my best. The shade is a pinky mauve, and depending on the angle or how the light catches the shade, it looks either more pink or it looks either more mauve. I hope that makes sense. Again, I find it a little bit hard to explain, but it looks so special and interesting. You know, when I look in the mirror and I turn my head, I see that color changing a bit. And it's not like a duochrome. Don't get me wrong. It's not a duochrome. But for some reason, the color seems to change a bit, again, depending on the angle and the light. And I have never seen this from Dior before. Maybe they did it and maybe I just don't have that blush, but I have never seen this before from the brand. Formula wise, it's a bit powdery. The Dior blushes are always more powdery compared to other blush formulas or blush formulas from other brands. And in general, I also find the pigmentation and the color payoff of the Dior blushes more subtle. These are not the strongest in pigment. I must say that with this shade, it was really easy to build up the intensity of the shade. I didn't have any issues with that. So I'm definitely not mad about this formula or this blush, and I actually find it more convenient when a blush isn't that pigmented, because it's more easy to build up the intensity. And most of the times I prefer a more subtle blush. I don't want my blush to be too present. So for me, this is actually a very good formula. Not all Dior blushes can be built up in intensity. I have some other shades and some of them just lack pigment. There is just not enough color in those blushes. So some of them will always be a very subtle flush of color on the cheeks. But with this one, it was very easy to build up the intensity to a level that I like or find pretty. So yeah, all in all, I am very, very happy with this blush. I really think this is a special color. Again, I haven't seen this from Dior before. If this shade looks appealing to you, don't hesitate, because I think you will really, really like this shade. Now let's talk some more about the Dior Addict Lip Maximizer in the shade Lucky Mahogany. Now, to those of you who are not familiar with the Dior Addict Lip Maximizer, this is a lip gloss with a plumping effect. And generally speaking, I am not the biggest fan of plumping lip products. I don't really enjoy the tingling effect it has on the lips. I find it very uncomfortable, very annoying. And I think that the Dior Addict Lip Maximizer is one of the few plumping lip products I actually like. I've tried many in the past and most of them just ended up in the bin after 2 or 3 uses, just because I couldn't stand that tingling feeling. Now the Maximizer does have a little bit of that tingling feeling, but not too much. I can handle it, so to say. So yeah, this is one of the few volumizing, plumping lip products that I actually enjoy. This is a very nourishing formula, a very hydrating gloss. It feels comfortable on the lips, not too sticky. The only downside is that it wears off pretty quickly. So after eating, drinking, you really need to reapply, because the shade is just completely gone. The gloss is gone. That's the only con I can think of with this Lip Maximizer. Color wise, this shade reminds me a lot of the other mahogany shade, number 20. But that one is more sheer. It has a more sheer finish. This one is more opaque. And this one contains some glitters, some sparkles, and the OG mahogany shade doesn't have that. So that's the biggest difference. And color-wise, this one is slightly more brown compared to the OG mahogany shade. And now let's talk some more about the Quint, the Lucky Rosegold eyeshadow palette. This palette contains 7 grams of product. It's made in France and it has a 6-month shelf life. Now, 6 months is not a lot, my friends. It's actually insane. 6 months is insane. Of course, you can still use this after those 6 months. I mean, you can store your eyeshadows for years without seeing anything strange in the formula, without seeing mold or weird things. Now, before I'm gonna give you some more information and share my thoughts about this palette, I want you to know that I am not a huge fan of the reformulation. Dior reformulated their eyeshadows a couple of years ago. I think it was 3 years ago. And I remember I bought a couple of those new quints and I really didn't like most of them. I think there were two that I enjoyed. I still have those two, and I also still use those two. But all the other ones, I think four, maybe five, I either gave them away or they ended up in the trash. It was really hit or miss with the new Dior quints at that time. The formula wasn't that good. The color payoff of some of the quints was so poor. I remember that some of them were very patchy, that I really had a hard time applying and blending some of the eyeshadows. So since that time, I think it was 3 years ago, I haven't bought a new Dior quint. Well, not like a regular quint. I've bought, for example, the Couleurs palettes because, well, first of all, they looked very appealing. And second, I really wanted to know if those Couleurs palettes had a different formula. And they have. I really enjoy the Couleurs palettes. I think the color payoff is good, the pigmentation is good, the longevity is good. I just don't really have anything bad to say about those Couleurs palettes. So I thought, you know, when I saw the promo pictures of this quint, I just thought, let's just give it a try. So my curiosity kind of took over. But when I started testing this palette, my expectations weren't that high. But in all honesty, I am not disappointed in this quint. Now, one of my biggest complaints with the reformulated quints was that some of them had these sheer lackluster topper shades. They felt very gritty and there wasn't much color to them. This palette doesn't have a topper shade like that. It doesn't have a true topper shade at all. So that's the good news. Also, in those reformulated quints, some of them, these satin shades and the mattes, they lacked pigment. The color payoff wasn't that good. But these, the pigment is okay. It's like medium pigmentation, not the weakest, not the strongest. And the color payoff is great. It's not that I have to dip in that pan over and over and over again to get some color. No. So yeah, based on my experiences so far, and I think I've used the palette for, I think 5 times now, I'm actually pretty pleased with the palette. Now, when we have a closer look at the color story, you'll see that there is one matte shade, and that's the dark plum shade. There's a satin metallic brown, but I think it's more satin than metallic. There's a shimmering lilac shade, there's a sparkly gold, and the last one is a beautiful fresh satin pink shade. Of course, I also have some comparisons for you for this Lucky Rosegold eyeshadow palette within the Dior collection. Well, first of all, I do not have that many Dior quints anymore. And second, I couldn't really find a color story that comes close to this Lucky Rosegold eyeshadow palette. I have compared the Lucky Rosegold palette to the Plum Tutu palette. I thought maybe these color stories would be a little bit similar, but no, these are not similar at all, as you can see here in the swatch. I've also compared this new Dior quint to palettes from some other brands. For example, this one from Viseart. This is the Violet Vespertine palette. And yeah, it may look a little bit similar, but the Viseart palette doesn't have a gold shade. And also the Viseart palette doesn't have a shimmering pink or a shimmering lilac, so not very similar. I've also compared this quint to the Paris Reveries palette from Viseart, and I think these two palettes more or less have the same vibe, but at the same time they are not very similar. And then there's Magnetic Purple from YSL. Now the Magnetic Purple eyeshadow palette is way more purple in tone compared to the Dior quint. The Dior palette is definitely softer in tone, and the YSL leans very, very purple. And the last one is from Victoria Beckham Beauty, the Orchid palette. I thought that maybe these would be a little bit similar too, but the Orchid palette from Victoria Beckham Beauty is more rosy. The overall vibe is more rosy compared to the Dior quint. Some final thoughts, my friends. First, the eyeshadow palette. It's not as bad as I had expected. So that's the good news. The formula still isn't as good as previous formulas from the brand, but I can live with it. But I can live with it doesn't justify the price tag. So yeah, I don't know if I would really recommend this eyeshadow palette. But at least it's not as bad as some of the previous reformulated quints. The Lip Maximizer, it's a product I think you either love or hate. Again, within the plumping lip products category, this is one of the few products I actually like. The color is pretty and it is a great pair with both the eyeshadow palette and the blush. So if you're looking for a more subtle type of lip plumping product, then you might want to have a look at these Dior Maximizers, the Lip Maximizer. These feel very nourishing and hydrating, but without that extreme tingling effect. And the blush, yes, it's a product I highly recommend, mostly because of the beautiful shade. I've explained to you why I love that shade so much. I think it's very, very pretty. So if this color looks appealing to you, if you love this type of mauve pink blush, then definitely give it a try. I don't think you will be disappointed. Thank you so much for watching, my friends, and of course I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.